Wait, before the video starts, I would like to give credit to this creator right here on screen, because their videos were one of the reasons why I even decided to make this theory. Go check them out. I'll have their channel linked in the description below. Okay, so it's multiple characters in Piggy. Some are more popular than others. Some have better lore than others. But one specific character that had everyone scratching their head to the skull is Patient Zero. Now, we already know some information about Patient Zero because of the notes in the Metro, which tells us that Patient Zero is infected. And a lot of people are speculating that Patient Zero could either be Piggy because she's also in the Metro where the notes are found, or Mrs. P because her sickness was the reason Substance 128 was created. Let's first start off with Mrs. P. Now, Mrs. P contracted a disease called glioma, which then Mr. P donated 40% of his own funds to research facilities all over the nation to research the cure for his wife's sickness. And we all know how that turned out. Now, according to his note, Mr. P only made 7 potions, which were given to 7 characters, even if it wasn't literally. These characters are Penny, Mother, Father, the Teacher, Doggy and Bunny, and Mrs. P. But we can also add in the player because, if you remember in book 2, it's later revealed that Pony gave both Doggy and the player the same potion, meaning Mr. P made 7 potions, but because of TSP, there are a total of 8 characters to be considered the original infected. Well, technically it's 10, but we'll get back into that later. Now, throughout the 35 plus chapters ever created in Piggy, both book 1 and book 2, and the character focus chapters, and the winter holiday chapters, and also the extra chapters, as well as the 5 different timelines. Even if you include both the bad ending and the good ending from the plan chapter, Patient Zero has only been mentioned twice throughout the entire game. Not physically, but in notes. We already talked about the first note found in the Metro, which tells us Patient Zero is infected. The second note tells us that Patient Zero is in hiding and being hunted down by the military. And this is what made people convinced about Mrs. P being Patient Zero. Because if you didn't know, we can actually see a silhouette of Mrs. P throughout one of the windows of the city chapter. And this is one of the main evidence that support that Mrs. P is Patient Zero. But how come? Well, the name Patient Zero just means the very first character to get an unknown disease, which makes sense because Mrs. P is the only character we know who got an unknown disease, which caused the entire infection. So is that it? Video over? Well, not exactly. This just seems too easy, too obvious. So I did some more digging. And not only did I find more information, I found evidence that could debunk Mrs. P being Patient Zero. The wiki confirms that glioma is a rare disease, and the only cases of glioma are confirmed to be in Rosella, which gets rid of one of the main evidence of Mrs. P being Patient Zero, since she's not the only one who's gotten this disease in the past. But what about the notes and the silhouette? Well, let's think about this in the story perspective. In an earlier theory, I said that Substance 128 takes control over the weakened areas of the infected, and it's confirmed in the game that Mrs. P is weak because of her sickness, and that's where Substance 128 takes control over her body. Before she can fully turn infected, she will lock herself in one of the buildings in the city chapter. And the time gap between the infection breakout and chapter 9 is mostly around a month and a half, so by that time, Mrs. P barely has control over her body, and is probably trying to get out of the room she locked herself in. Also, it wouldn't make sense for the military to hunt her down, because she's technically considered an original infected since she took the potion, just like Penny Piggy. Also, it would be most likely the military would try to find someone who came in contact with Substance 128 way earlier before the potions were even getting out. The only reason they can see Mrs. P being hunted down would be because Mr. P was working with the military to find his wife, but that seems highly unlikely. Now this leads us to our next suspect, Piggy. Now Piggy is found in the Metro, and the Metro is connected to the store, the decay, and the hospital chapter, but the only chapters we're going to be focusing on is the decay and the hospital chapter. Now, in one of the rooms on the second floor of the hospital, there were some testing tubes, as well as some tubes outside of the room. A little bit suspicious, don't you think? It's almost like there were test subjects before the volunteers came to test Substance 128. And what a coincidence, Piggy is located below the hospital. So what am I trying to say? Is Piggy Patient Zero? Well, not exactly. But instead, Piggy is one of the first test subjects for Substance 128. Want something dark? Take a look at Piggy. Notice what she's grabbing in her arm as a weapon, a skeleton arm. And it's not hers. If it was, she wouldn't be able to grab it or be able to stick her other hand out, meaning it belongs to someone else. And here's the dark part. Notice how Piggy spawns near the crates that are way bigger than her, meaning there's more than enough space for Piggy, and there's a total of 6 crates. But why? Well, what if I told you there's actually more Piggies, specifically more test subjects that the hospital used? Why do you think there's so many testing tubes all over the place? If a test subject goes wrong because of the early stages of substance 128, they can simply just be killed off and replaced, repeating the process until they get a good sample. And I actually know how many times this has happened. Take a look at the size of Piggy next to a crate. Do some quick measurements, and there will be a total of 2 to 3 test subjects to fit in one giant crate, and a total of 1 to 2 test subjects in the smaller crate, meaning there's more than 10 to 14 test subjects in these crates, and it's possible that one of them is patient 0, and I think I know who it is. The rabbit monster from the Decay chapter. No, seriously, this could be patient 0. But how, you may ask? It's too big to fit in one of the crates, and looks nothing like Piggy. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even exist, because it's just a hallucination in Bunny's head. Or is it? Though it's one of the tallest characters in the game, it's still possible it could fit in the crate. And even if it doesn't look like Piggy, they still have some similarities. They both have their skulls popping out on the same side of the head, and they both reach their hand out when chasing someone. And they also have a similar jump scare. First, listen to Piggy. Now listen to the rabbit monster. They sound similar, but they have a different pitch, and the rabbit monster is missing an arm while Piggy is holding someone else's arm. Even though the rabbit monster could be an illusion, there still would have been something else chasing Bunny in order to create that illusion. As a matter of fact, Bunny never even took the exact same potion the original infected took. If we go back to the true ending of the plant chapter, Mr. P tells the player that he gave Bunny another rush cure because she was attacked in the hospital when it was raided in chapter 6, which takes place a month and a half after the infection broke out. So it wouldn't make sense for Mr. P to give Bunny the exact same potion that started the infection, which means Bunny never took substance 128, but instead a variation of it, which obviously doesn't work because Bunny still gets infected. And it could be why the monster may look like a rabbit, even though it could be something completely different. And since it's capable for breaking through walls, it could explain why the military couldn't find Patient 0 yet, because it could easily escape. So in conclusion, Patient 0 isn't Mrs. P, and it isn't Piggy, but instead Patient 0 is an early test subject for Substance 128, and before I forget, Patient 0 and Piggy are our 9th and 10th original infected, since they were early test subjects. But anyways, comment down below what you guys think of this, and subscribe for more Piggy theory. Have a good rest of your day.